On today's Locked On Giants podcast, let's call this the What Are You Crazy episode, as I'm going to give you three outside the box yet plausible moves that could make sense for the New York Giants. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work, as well as that of my editorial team. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code Locked On NFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All right, Giant fans, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, I thought I would get a little crazy. All right. Now, some of you might hear what I have to say and say, yeah, you're not so crazy after all. But I figure, look, it's Friday. Let's get a little creative here. And I came up with three scenarios that, while on the surface, if I mention them, you're going to say, what the heck are you thinking? Hear me out on them. Maybe they make more sense than you realize at first. All right. These could be plausible moves. I'm not saying they're going to happen. I don't think they will, but I'm trying to be a little creative, think outside the box here, because anything and everything, as you guys know, can happen during a draft, during free agency, during the whole roster building process. So I'm going to give you three scenarios and let's have a little fun with this. Why not? It's Friday, right? Let's have some fun. All right. Scenario number one. I think the Giants could conceivably engage in a draft day trade on day one. Now, what I have them doing here is when they go on the clock at number 3, trade down a few spots. All right. Not too far down. Maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe 4 spots at the most. Pick up some extra draft assets. All right. Now, this is contingent on, obviously, the 2 quarterbacks being off the board, or even if one quarterback is off the board by the time the Giants go on the clock, if the second quarterback that's left isn't a guy that the Giants really don't love, don't force that pick. Trade down. All right. Now, some of you are saying, well, if the quarterback's off the board and the guy that they don't like isn't there, why not take, maybe a Hunter, maybe a Carter, maybe a Graham, take somebody at number 3. Don't give up a chance of getting a good player there. I'm saying trade down because I think the Giants need to stock up on draft assets. This is a team that needs a lot, and I mean a lot, of help. They have a lot of holes to fill, and if you can build up some additional assets, not just for this year's draft, but also for next year's draft, 2026, in the event that you don't get the quarterback that you want and you have to trade up to get him, now you've got some more ammunition. And even if you get the quarterback you want this year, you still have more ammunition next year. So if you want to make a bold trade upward to get a really, really good player that maybe is out of your initial reach, depending on where you draft, I just think it makes sense. Now, with that said, here's something that I could also see happening. All right. If the Giants don't get their guy at quarterback, let's say their guy is Cam Ward. Cam Ward's off the board by the time the Giants go on the clock at 3. Let's say the Giants now have, we'll say Jackson Dart. All right. Jackson Dart right now, I think a lot of teams maybe have him with a second round grade, maybe at like a high second round grade. Here's what I would do if I'm the Giants, if that scenario pops up. If I'm the Giants and I don't get my quarterback at 3 and I end up trading down, what I look to do at that point is I look to trade back into the bottom of the first round. And here's why I look to do this. All right, there was an interesting stat. I believe Lance Zierlein of NFL.com had this stat. He said over the past few years, there's been more quarterbacks drafted in the first round and not so much in the second round. And there's a reason for that, folks. And this is the reason that's driving this suggestion, if you will, that I have. The reason is if you wait until the second round and you take your quarterback then, you now have him for 4 years. If you trade back into the first round and you take your quarterback, you now have the benefit of the option year. And here's why this is so important. Most of the quarterbacks, if not all the quarterbacks in this draft class, are probably not going to be day one starters. All right. Unless the team is really, really desperate to roll out a guy, I don't think they're going to be day one starters. I think the Giants are going to sign a veteran bridge quarterback. They're going to give that guy a lot of money to start in 2025. If they do draft a quarterback, that kid's going to sit, right? In the same way that Eli Manning sat when they acquired him via trade. So that being said, this is why you want to have the option year. If that kid ends up sitting for a year and doesn't play until year number 2 of his rookie contract, well, if you get him in the second round on day 2, you now have 3 years really to evaluate if he's going to be your guy moving forward. And that's if you feel he's ready to roll, right? So by moving back into the bottom of the first round and taking your quarterback there, you now have the benefit of the option year. So if you say, okay, look, the plan is to roll the rookie out in year 2 of his contract, and maybe, things maybe are shaky, there's an injury or something. Now you're giving yourself a little bit of a cushion in the event something unexpected happens. So that's why I think it would make sense if you're the Giants to see if you can't move back into the bottom of the first round, even if it means giving up, your second round pick and maybe one of the picks you acquired in your trade down with whatever team it is you're trading down with. Now, look, some people are saying, no, just trade up, get the quarterback and call it a day. In order to get the quarterback, I'm pretty sure it's going to take the Giants' second round draft pick this year to get a guy to move up. All right. That's if Titans or the Browns even want to trade down with the Giants, which I would be surprised if they do. Folks, I don't see Joe Shane going from pick number 3, giving up, his second round pick and then waiting until the third round to get his next guy. I just don't see it. It doesn't make sense. And I would be surprised if he does it. So in all likelihood, I think the Giants will probably stay put at number 3, take the best available at that spot. But if they were feeling really, really ballsy and creative, why not consider the scenario I just outlined? All right. It sounds crazy, but hey, anything is possible. And if you look at the ramifications, like I said, the extra year on the contract, and plus, if you're trading back into the bottom of the first round, you're really not at that point reaching for a guy that maybe you had a high second round draft grade on anyway. So I just think it makes too much sense not to consider if you're the Giants. All right. So that's that. That's the first crazy idea that I have. What else do I have? Well, coming up next, I have a keep 'em, dump 'em scenario for you. That's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you love going to live events, you're going to need to check out Game Time. Game Time offers an amazing selection of tickets at competitive prices, and they have made it so easy to get tickets to your favorite events with their Game Time Picks feature, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, saving you all kinds of time. Game Time also offers flash deals to save you even more money on select events, and they make the ticket buying experience so easy. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And coming up next week on the Locked On Giants podcast, I've got a couple of guests that I'm trying to line up, one of whom is Emery Hunt of CBS Sports and Football Game Plan. Emery has been at both the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, so I want to get some more perspectives from Emery. I know this past week we had a bunch of guests on from Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl that were in attendance, but I always like to hear from Emery because he does his homework and he really is, I think, one of the most underrated draft analysts out there. So we'll hear what he has to say. And then another special guest that I'm going to have on the program is a former New York Giants assistant coach, Dr. Anthony Blevins. We're going to have him on to talk about the draft. We'll talk a little bit about coaching, just a bunch of topics. So I'm really excited to hear from Dr. Blevins and have him on the show next week as we continue our 5-day coverage here of New York Giants. And I also want to mention real quick, because a lot of you have asked me, we might be doing a live stream at some point next week with Tana and Bad Dog. All right. So I've been in contact with Dog. I've got to get in touch with Tana and figure out if there's a day that we could do it, if we're going to do it next week or if we're going to wait till after the Super Bowl, because there's loads to talk about. And it's always fun getting together with Dog and Tana. And I miss those guys. I really do. But hopefully I get to do that either next week or the week after. So that's what's coming up here on Locked On Giants. Let's get back to today's show, the Are You Crazy edition. Now, those of you who are still watching the program, if you haven't already said, my God, you're crazy. What? Trade in the draft, and not take a quarterback. Okay, here's another wacky proposal, if you will. And it's not too wacky if you hear me out, because I've got the data to present here. Now, a lot of you are down on Kayvon Thibodeau, who didn't quite have the breakout year this year that he had the previous year. Now, part of that, obviously, due to his wrist injury, but, Kayvon Thibodeau was the guy who I think, in some cases splits the fan base. Some fans love him. Some fans want to get rid of him. And I had this wild idea. I know it's not going to happen, but I'm going to throw it out here anyway. What if the Giants stuck with Azeez Ojulari, who's supposed to be an unrestricted free agent, and they sought to move Kayvon Thibodeau via a trade? Now, before we go anywhere, the edge class this year is loaded. It is loaded, all right? So maybe they don't move Kayvon Thibodeau this year. Maybe they look to move him the following year. I don't know. But just hear me out on this Azeez Ojulari thing. So I looked up the stats of both guys. Now, Azeez Ojulari, injury shortened season and all that, and I know that's the number one reason why they shouldn't give him a contract. But Azeez Ojulari actually had a better quarterback pressure rate than Kayvon Thibodeau in their careers. All right, Azeez has had success pressuring the quarterback on 11.2% of his pass rushes. Thibodeau only 11. So it's kind of neck and neck. Coverage, right? I mentioned coverage because for whatever reason, this coaching staff still likes to drop their edge rushers into coverage, which I don't necessarily agree with. But Azeez has a career coverage rating, 102.4. Thibodeau, 95.8. So again, kind of neck and neck, all right? The lower the coverage rating, the better. Here's why I say it's not necessarily a crazy idea to maybe move on from Thibodeau. The money. Now, Azeez Ojulari, according to Spot Track, is projected to come in at around $7.6 million per year based on a 2-year contract for $133 million. That's not too bad. Thibodeau in 2025 has a $9.971 million cap hit. If the Giants exercise his option year, which I fully expect they will if they don't move him, that will balloon to $16.066 million. Now, if you can get Azeez Ojulari for $7.6 million per year, wouldn't it make sense? And again, I understand he's had injury issues. Thibodeau had injury issues his rookie year to start off. I think he missed a couple games. And then, of course, the broken wrist. So if you're looking to save a little bit of money, get a little bit better production, does it make sense to maybe consider bringing back Ojulari? And now you have the flexibility, if you want to move Thibodeau. Now, keep in mind, folks, pass rushers do not grow on trees. I get that. And I don't think the Giants will move Thibodeau because, for all intents and purposes, Thibodeau, in my opinion at any rate, is a better run defender than Ojulari. So, that being said, if they could find a way to keep Ojulari at $7.6 million a year, I'd do it. I would definitely do it. You've got to have three deep anyway on a pass rush. They lose Ojulari, they're going to have just Burns and Thibodeau. You're going to need a third guy anyway. And, you're not going to spend for him in free agency. In the draft, you're probably not going to get a stud that you can sit there and say, yeah, he could be our third guy. So why not? Why not give some thought to keeping Ojulari? You're saying the injury factor? Well, that's a risk that you take. But I sure would hate to see him walk away and the Giants get nothing in return for him. If they're going to move on from him, they should have traded him last year when they had the chance. But they weren't willing to take a 5th-round pick for him. They wanted at least a 4th. And you know my philosophy, guys. If you're going to make a move, if you're a team that has a lot of holes, and you have a guy that maybe isn't in your long-term plans, take whatever you could get from him. Because this way you could have used that pick this year in 2025 instead of running the risk of, oh, now, will we get a comp pick or won't we get a comp pick? I just feel like the Giants botched that one. So that being said, if you want to salvage it, keep Ojulari. And then come the trade deadline in 2025, if he's doing well, maybe you look to move Thibodeau. If not, maybe you flip it. You give yourself a mulligan. I don't think the Giants will do that, but that's what I would recommend. That's what I would consider doing once I, really looked at everything. But on the surface, I think it makes sense. All right, now I've got one more crazy idea, or maybe it's not so crazy. And this is a move that I actually think could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it's something that I think could happen. What is it? I will tell you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw for 1 yard for you to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the Super Sweet Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Giant fans, if you are looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue Faithful where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic-free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel where we can talk with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate with me via text as well, one-on-one. So come see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code Blue Crew, you will get your first 2 months after your free 14-day trial ends at 50% off the regular price of $4.99 per month. If you don't like the service, just cancel before your trial ends and you'll owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/LoggedOnNYGiants and be sure to enter that promo code Blue Crew, BLUECREW, at the top of the page for your 2-month discount. Text and data rates may apply. Please see your carrier's plan for details. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we're just throwing out some crazy ideas. It's Friday, the end of the week. It's been a long week. I don't know about you, but I've been like super busy with the, monitoring the Senior Bowl practices and the Shrine Game practices. And then this weekend, you've got both games coming up. So still a lot of stuff to get through. But I decided let's have a little fun on today's show. Again, it's Friday. Why not, right? So we're going over some crazy ideas that maybe have a little bit of merit. And this next one called Make This Move, this is one that I've actually talked about before on the show, but I'm going to go a little bit more more into depth with this one. And that is, we know the Giants need cornerback help. I don't think they're going to re-sign Adoree Jackson. You have heard me say that I would love to see them get a veteran back there because it is a relatively young group. But then I had this thought, why not move Drew Phillips, their slot cornerback, to the perimeter? Now hear me out on this one. Drew Phillips at Kentucky played mostly on the perimeter. When the Giants drafted him, you might recall Joe Shane spoke about how Drew Phillips has inside and outside flexibility, meaning that, they were going to start him in the slot and, see where they go from there. Now, I went back and I took a look at the numbers, all right? Drew Phillips in the slot this year had a 96.1 coverage rating. Not too bad. And he allowed 82% of the pass targets against him to be completed. At Kentucky, he finished with an 87.9 rating playing the perimeter, okay? And he allowed 58.9% of the pass targets thrown against him to be completed. So there's some merit there about maybe considering him for that CB2 spot opposite of Deonte Banks. Now, you're probably saying, well, if you move him from the slot, who are you going to plug in there? Folks, I would go back with Cordell Flott in the slot. All right, some numbers for you. Cordell Flott in 2023, when he played in the slot for the Giants, had a 95.6 coverage rating, and he allowed 64.5% of of the pass targets thrown against him to be complete. Playing outside this past season, Flott had a 90 NFL coverage rating, so it was a little bit better than his slot coverage rating, but he also allowed 67.4% of the pass targets against him to be completed. The idea is not as crazy as it sounds. All right. Now, you could say, well, the Giants, they need a veteran cornerback back there because it is a young group. And I wouldn't say I hate that idea. But at some point, you got to wonder if they're going to move Drew Phillips to the perimeter because they did mention that he can do it. Now, if you have a viable answer to go back into the slot, Cordell Flott's your guy, then you go that route. Or maybe you do a slot cornerback by committee type of role. So that's something I'm curious to see if the Giants coaching staff maybe considers. Because, I just think that you've got to shake things up a little bit. And by the way, the free agency money that they could maybe save on a veteran cornerback, because look, if they go and they get a CB1, it's going to cost them. Okay, a quarterback and a CB1, that's going to basically wipe out, I would think, most of their free agency cap space. So if you can maybe make that move and use the money that you would save on a veteran cornerback, maybe put it towards, I don't know, offensive line or, you know, I'm not sure what other position, maybe defensive line if you want to, although it's a deep defensive line class in this draft. Wouldn't that make more sense? I think it might. But as you all know, I don't get paid to make those decisions. I just sit here and I kick them around. I know these sound wild, but like I said, wanted to have a little fun on today's show because it's the end of the week. And look, this weekend really it's just the Pro Bowl. Who cares about the Pro Bowl, right? And then you also have the Senior Bowl, like I said, and then next week the Super Bowl. So that you know that'll be the last true football that we have until next September. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show with these suggestions. I'm sure a lot of you are going to check in and with comments about how I'm nuts and for saying this, that, and the other thing. But I assure you, I gave some hard thought about to all of these things. And look, if you disagree, that's fine. But I hope this made you think somewhat. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. As always, thank you for tuning in and spending part of your day with us here. I will see you on Monday.